You all might also be interested to know that Bhante Silananda and I just saw a copperhead snake out on the property this morning. Okay.
No. Brian, we have.
Okay.
Oh, we have a long time after long time. Okay, let us begin our meditation first, Metta meditation. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds. Whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long, large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth, may all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere, neither from anger nor ill will, should anyone wish harm to another, as a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child. Even so, towards all living beings, one should cultivate a boundless heart. One should cultivate for all the world a heart of boundless loving friendliness, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without hate or resentment, whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, or whenever awake. One should develop this mindfulness. This is called divinely dwelling here, not falling into erroneous views, but virtuous and endowed with vision, removing desire for sensual pleasures. One comes never again to birth in the womb. It is a very wonderful thought of metta. Let us begin our meditation. We want to share our metta with everybody before we start meditation. And at the end of also we want to wish everybody we share our metta with everybody. Now let us begin our mindfulness practice. Keep paying total undivided mindful attention to your breath. Let the breath flow in and out naturally and become aware of inhaling as inhaling. You notice the breath touching the rims of your nostrils, and then you notice expanding your chest area and expanding your lower abdominal area as you breathe in. As you breathe out, you notice the contraction of lower abdomen and contraction of chest area and the breath leaving your nostrils. So when you breathe in and out, noticing these changes, also you notice that there is a brief pause between inhaling and exhaling. You don't have to exaggerate the pause. Let it be as brief as it is, because this is not a breathing exercise or manipulating breath. We simply let the breath flow in and out. In this mindfulness practice, we don't force. And then as we breathe in and out, we feel the breath. That is the only way we notice the breath without using words, concepts. And then we notice feelings. perception, volition or intention, and consciousness. This, in general terms, are called aggregates, 5 aggregates. And they change as we breathe in and out. As you know, they are called aggregate because in each group there are many other factors. As we breathe in and out, they change. What we experience as we breathe in will no longer be there when we breathe out. They are changing very quickly. When we see this, there is no need to get excited, agitated, because they all are the same. Every change is the same. There is no special change or fast change or slow change. They change at the same speed, same way. When we see this sameness, instead of getting monotonous, we relax our body, knowing this reality, and relax our breath, relax our mind. When these 3 parts relaxed, then we see the mind naturally let go of any greed that arises in our mind. Desire to hold on to anything fades away. And then that place is very clear. Then when it is clear, next is our resentment or anger. If there is any, also fades away because there is no resistance. We don't grab one and reject another, or we don't make any discrimination between one and another. They all are the same, changing. And then resentment fades away. That is another hindrance. When it fades away, the mind becomes still clear. And then metta feeling, we begin to feel. We feel metta at that point. We feel metta for those who are suffering. And then awareness of suffering arises in our mind. And we want to help them. In fact, this whole practice we began in the middle of March, aiming at those suffering persons, suffering beings. When we know that there are suffering beings, compassion arises in our mind, in our heart, to help them. And then joy arises because we have seen the results of our very wholesome and selfless practice. And then happiness arises because of that. And then thus our greed, hatred, restlessness and worry, sleepiness and drowsiness and doubt fades away. Then we gain concentration, which may not be very deep, but deep enough to see subtle changes in our body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts and consciousness. We can see their changes more clearly as we gain concentration. And then we understand that we are all in a state of flux, changing, moving, appearing and disappearing beings within very same framework. So with this we continue our practice for the next few minutes until you hear the bell or my recital. dukkha patta ca niddukkha, bhaya patta ca nibbhaya, soka patta ca nissoka, hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all beings be. Friends, with this we end this silent meditation, and then I want to continue our talk on dependent origination. And yesterday I was talking about underlying tendencies of pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to pleasant feeling is greed. Underlying tendency to unpleasant feeling is anger or resentment, hate. Underlying tendency to neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation or feeling is confusion. But, and these underlying tendencies should be abandoned. Anusaya. Anusaya, when so long as anusaya are there, two other states also arise. Anusaya is underlying state, sleeping state. Then pariyuttana is the rising or waking up state, and vitikama is putting that underlying tendency to action. When desire as underlying tendency becomes active, we do all desirous things. We desire this, we desire that. Always we keep looking for something. We will talk about it later. Underlying tendency to grief or disappointment or pain arises when it becomes active. Underlying tendency to pain is hate. When it is active, we use hateful word, think hateful thought, and do hating action. Physically attacking, killing, deliberately causing pain to others. When underlying tendency to neither painful nor pleasant feeling arises, confusion arises. When we are confused, we are so deluded and we don't really know what we do. Therefore, this underlying tendency should be abandoned at the very root. That is what is called nib in the bud, in the bud. So, but all the underlying tendency to desire should not be abandoned. Underlying tendency to hate or resentment should not be abandoned. All underlying tendency to neither pleasant nor unpleasant should not be abandoned. And what are those? When one practices certain things, one would not abandon underlying tendency to greed. For example, when one, as we have been practicing meditation, as every day I mention, when our hindrances are subsided, we gain tranquility, joy, happiness, concentration, there is underlying tendency to desire. I call it a wholesome desire. We abandon unwholesome desire and do not abandon wholesome desire. What is the difference between these two? The desire to perpetuate desire is unwholesome desire. Desire to be desireless is wholesome desire. When Siddhartha Gautama abandoned his teachers and began to practice on his own, he recollected the attainment of first jhana while he was still a little boy on the ploughing festival day. He was put under a rose apple tree, and since he did not see anyone around, perhaps he might have seen insects, big insects swallowing small insects, and a lizard coming and swallowing the insect, big insect. Then the snake comes and swallowing the lizard, and then hawk comes and take away the snake. Perhaps seeing these sort of things, he began to wonder what sort of right is there for big ones to swallow the small ones. So he did not find any solution, but he was contemplating, and slowly he attained first jhana. After he abandoned his teachers, Alara, Kalang, Buddha, Gramput and so forth, he began to practice on his own. Then he thought, what should I practice? I abandoned this, I abandoned this, I abandoned this. What should I practice? Then he remembered the attainment of the first jhana as a child. Then he remembered that he did not have attachment to that pleasure that he gained from the first jhana. Then he knew why should he be afraid of attaining jhana? Because there is no desire as underlying tendency. From this very profound personal experience, Buddha saw that all underlying tendency to desire should not be abandoned. All underlying tendency to pleasure, joy, should not be abandoned. What sort of underlying tendency to pleasure should not be abandoned? When we gain jhana, because it is so calming, relaxing, not clinging to anything. Remember, we have abandoned hindrances. Number one of them is greed. So having abandoned greed, we attain the first jhana. And therefore that is a wholesome desire. Desire to overcome desire and desire to be desireless. That is what we call wholesome desire. So that desire, underlying that pleasant feeling, pleasant sensation, this desire arises, and that should not be abandoned. And then when the next is hate, when painful feeling arises, the underlying tendency is hate or anger. But this particular state that I am going to mention, the underlying tendency to painful state should not be abandoned. What is that? This is very interesting. The underlying tendency to desire arises from, that desire arises, or that pleasant sensation arises through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind. Pleasant, that's called household desire that ordinary people have. Using the same form, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, another person who knows the Dhamma, practicing Dhamma, practicing meditation, also will use eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind to see form, hear sound, smells, taste things, tangible, the flavor of anything, and then tangible things and mental objects, using the same thing that everybody else uses. But the difference is this, that this person practice this meditation. Seeing in meditation, what does he see? Ordinary people don't see them. But the person who practices meditation sees eyes are impermanent, forms are impermanent, ears are impermanent, sounds are impermanent, nose is impermanent, smell is impermanent, tongue is impermanent, taste impermanent, the body is impermanent, tangible impermanent, the mind impermanent, mind objects are impermanent. But he sees something different from ordinary people. What does he see? He sees impermanence. Then one day he would think, well, I do everything. I say impermanence, 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 impermanence every day. But I have not attained anything. Then anger, sort of disappointment arises in his mind. That disappointment is a wholesome disappointment, wholesome anger. Why it is wholesome? He is not angry with anybody, any person. He is angry with not attaining that particular state. And therefore what does he do? Instead of perpetuating this anger, he arouses his spiritual urgency. He reflects, where have I gone wrong? Why I have not attained that state? I followed every rule in the book, all instructions, everything that I have learned from my teachers, friends, Kalyana Mittas, I followed. And still I am in the same place. And then you think, oh well, I must have not done something right. I have not been so serious, not consistent. I want to make it happen. So he arouses his spiritual urgency. For his spiritual urgency, the Pali word is Dhamma Sangvega. Sangvega. Vega means speed. In Pali, Vega. Sang means additional speed. So he arouses his energy, mindfulness, and all spiritual faculties. He will refresh, and then he practice more and more, and then he will attain that. So that disappointment, so-called anger, should not be disappointed, should not be abandoned. But he uses it to arouse spiritual urgency to attain that particular state. When ordinary people have anger, that person will use it to do something very, very wrong, like killing. We can see that in media these days. You hear when you watch news, the killing. So because of the anger and hatred. Now, that doesn't happen when you have spiritual anger. That arouses your spiritual urgency. Then next is neither painful nor pleasant feeling arises, and the underlying tendency to that is confusion, ignorance. Now, here, when neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling arises, the one who has been practicing meditation will not have underlying tendency of ignorance. Rather, he has equanimity. Equanimity in a spiritual practice is a very, very wholesome state. It is exactly like before. Ordinary people have neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling because that person does not know the limit. That person has what do you call, you remember this very famous statement of sour grape. They try and then they don't get it, and then they become sort of depressed, and then just think, who cares, I don't need that. Not because they don't need it, but they tried very hard, but they could not get it. Why? Why they get this feeling? Because they don't know the limit. They don't know their the karma. They don't know how much effort they can make. They don't know how long they live. They don't know how much energy they have. Not knowing all these things, they struggle and then come to a conclusion that they don't care. Give up. Give up. But when you have spiritual equanimity, feeling, you don't, you use the same senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, just like anybody else, and then form, feeling, sound, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch and mental thought. They use the same thing. But the difference is the one who practices meditation sees the same thing in different light. They exactly like before, he says, eyes are impermanent, sights are impermanent. Eyes and the ears are impermanent, sound is impermanent. So seeing impermanence, he comes to understanding that all these are the same. There is nothing to excite, nothing to reject, nothing to accept. Just see them exactly as they are, that they are changing all the time. So the mind remains equanimous. That equanimity is a very powerful, meaningful mental state. Now, I mentioned yesterday, so that equanimity doesn't have underlying tendency of greed, but that equanimity has wisdom, understanding. I mentioned yesterday, underlying tendency of ignorance arises. What do you call this? From the neither painful nor pleasant feelings have underlying tendency of ignorance. But when one meditates, when neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling arises, the person does not have ignorance, rather the person has wisdom. What is that wisdom? Seeing rising and falling, That is what is called vipassana jnana. Udayabbe jnana. Udayabbe jnana means the knowledge of rising and falling. That is the vipassana knowledge, not ignorance, wisdom. So, I mentioned yesterday counterparts. Today I want to remind it once again. What is the counterpart of pain? A pleasure. What is the counterpart of neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling? Is ignorance. What is the counterpart of ignorance? Is knowledge. What is the counterpart of knowledge? Deliverance. What is the counterpart of deliverance? Nibbana. Then from there you cannot ask what is the counterpart of Nibbana, because beyond Nibbana is the end of all counterparts, end of equanimity. So that is why the Buddha said in Sabbe Dhamma, discourse in Anguttara Nikaya, Vimutti Sara Sabbe Dhamma, Amatogada Sabbe Dhamma, Nibbana Paryosana Sabbe Dhamma. Liberation, Amata means deathlessness, and Nibbana is the last attainment. So, then I like to bring up how the feeling arises. We discussed this earlier. Friends, we always must keep in mind we must keep in mind that we are dealing with mentality, materiality. Feeling is one of the mentality factors. If I ask you what are the mentality factors, contact, feeling, perception, thought, and attention. Contact, feeling, perception, thought, or volitional formations, and attention. So after contact, feeling. Only when we have contact, feeling arises. The feeling arises not as because it is in the mentality factor, but also because feeling is accompanied by consciousness. And therefore, the tables, trees, and other inanimate objects don't have feeling, don't have contact. Although they touch each other, they touch when you put rock on a table, you put the pen on the table, pen contact the table. But that is not the same kind of contact we as human beings have. We human beings have contact with the consciousness, therefore there is a feeling. When the pen is put on the table, although there is a contact, that contact doesn't have feeling, doesn't become the cause of feeling. So for feelings to arise, when two things come together, there must be consciousness. So the two objects, consciousness, and combination of these three is called contact. When these three things come together, it is called contact. When that contact arises, feeling arises. Why feeling arises? Because the consciousness is there. Consciousness is there. So, I like to draw your attention to very wonderful discourse that Venerable Nandaka gave to bhikkhunis in the time of the Buddha. There was, even today, in Vinaya, there is a rule that every full moon and new moon, that is twice a month, bhikkhus must go to bhikkhunis monastery. One selected bhikkhu with another monk or lay person, man, should go to bhikkhunis monastery and give them admonition, short Dhamma talk, advice. That is one of the requirements. So one day, Mahapajapati Gautami also came and reminded the bhikkhus that one bhikkhu should go and give a Dhamma talk to bhikkhunis. And so then the Buddha asked, whose turn is that? Who is supposed to go today to give Dhamma talk to bhikkhunis? Monk said, Venerable Nandaka. Then monk said, but he doesn't like to go there. He doesn't like to go and give Dhamma talks. Buddha called Nandaka and said, Nandaka, go and give Dhamma talk. He went. And he gave a Dhamma talk in a sort of catechismic way, questions and answers. He asked questions. He told them in advance, sisters, I am going to ask you questions. If you know, you say no. If you don't know, you say we don't know. And so he asked whether form is permanent or impermanent. They said impermanent and so forth. Feelings are permanent or impermanent. Perception permanent or impermanent. Thoughts permanent or impermanent. Consciousness permanent or impermanent. Eyes are impermanent or permanent, and so forth. He referring to exactly like Anatta Lakkana Sutta in Samyutta Nikaya, where Buddha started explaining the form, feeling, and so forth, as they are. He asked, what do you think, because is form permanent or impermanent? And says impermanent, and so forth. The same way, same discourse, Venerable Nandaka delivered to these bhikkhunis and asked whether they are permanent or impermanent. And then he came to feelings, form, feelings. Then he asked them whether feelings are permanent or impermanent. They say impermanent. And they said, Venerable Sir, before you ask us, we knew that they are impermanent. There's a very beautiful sounding Pali terms they used. I like to recite it before I end the talk for you to remember. So tomorrow when I talk, you may remember this and you will refresh your mind when I talk about it. They said, tajya passa tajya passa tajya vedana uppajjanti. Tajyasa passasa tajya vedana pahiyati, nirujjati. So it sounds like tajja, 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 tajja. And if you remember that, tajja means from born from that, ja means birth, arising, like jati. Tajja means from that, tat, ja, from that, this feeling arises. When that disappears, this feeling disappears. Reminding again, dependent origination. So, I want to continue this talk tomorrow, starting from there, and then you may you may refresh your memory when I start talking on this tomorrow. For now, I think I want to end this talk. Our lunch time is coming, so we have to be very. We have to end this and go and have Buddha Puja and so forth. Friends, we started with Metta, and we practice Metta meditation. And once again, I want to wish, on behalf of all of us, I want to wish, may all those who are suffering from this COVID-19 be free from suffering. All those who are grief-stricken and sorrowing, lamenting even today for losing their relatives, friends, and may they be relieved from that grief. And there are many people who are trying to help these patients, doctors, nurses, and so forth, dedicating their time, energy, skill, and also risking their own life. May they be healthy and safe and secure, and have courage, understanding, and as normal, may they have compassion and patience. And those others who are supporting them in many different ways also be healthy and peaceful, and others who are making decisions in many places, many countries, and they are in a decision-making position because of their powers of political or otherwise. May they be wise, have patience and compassion, and have wisdom to make a fair decisions for the benefit of everybody. With this wish of metta, let me end this little talk, and I'm so pleased that you all came, and may you all attain liberation. Live long in good health.